From Lagos, the nation's commercial capital, this is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Ayotunde Balogun.
Hello and welcome. Tonight, 7 People's Democratic Party governors institute a suit before the Supreme Court of Nigeria challenging the 6-month suspension of the Rivers State Governor, Siminalayi Fubara. A heated exchange ensues as the Senate rejects motion to immortalize late Professor Humphrey Nwosu. A bill seeking to remove immunity from the Vice President, governors and their deputy governors passes through second reading of the House of Representatives. Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Kudirat Kekereekun, laments rising level of unethical conduct among Nigerian lawyers. And Atlantic Magazine publishes Yemen strike messages shared in White House group chat.
And on business, Debt Management Office DMO announces 300 billion naira sovereign sukuk to fund capital projects in the country.
On sports news tonight, 19-year-old wild card Alexander Ila producing huge upset, defeating world number 2 Iga Swiatek 6-7-5 to reach the semi-finals at the Miami Open.
And from the nation's capital, a Zamfara state government delegation visits victims of a bandit ambush. Deputy Governor Mani Momoni assures residents of improved security.
We begin tonight with a major legal challenge that has been launched against the imposition of a state of emergency in Rivers State. Now, 7 governors, all members of the People's Democratic Party, the PDP, have filed a suit before the Supreme Court of Nigeria contesting the 6-month suspension of one of their own, the Rivers State Governor, Siminalayi Fubara. The governors of Bauchi, Adamawa, Bayelsa, Enugu, Osun, Plateau and Zamfara, through their respective attorneys general, are vehemently questioning the constitutional authority of President Bola Tinubu to carry out such a suspension. In their filing, they argue that the suspension is unconstitutional and are seeking a declaration from the apex court that the president lacks the powers to suspend a democratically elected governor or deputy governor under any guise, including a state of emergency. Now, the governors are further challenging the president's authority to suspend the State House of Assembly, citing sections of the 1999 Constitution. They assert that President Bola Tinubu does not possess the statutory powers to suspend a serving governor and appoint a sole administrator in their place. Well, the PDP governors are also demanding the Supreme Court nullify the appointment of the sole administrator currently governing Rivers State. Meanwhile, the Rivers State government has suspended all political office holders and appointees across the state, effective immediately. A statement issued by the Chief of Staff to the sole administrator of Rivers State explains that the suspension was in line with the powers conferred on the state administrator, retired Vice Admiral Ibokete Ibas, by President Bola Tinubu. The affected officials include the Secretary to the State Government, the SSG, the Chief of Staff, all honorable commissioners, chairmen and members of boards, councils of agencies, commissions, institutions and parastatals, all special advisors, special assistants and senior special assistants. The statement further directed the suspended officials to hand over to the permanent secretaries in their respective ministries, departments and agencies, the MDAs. In cases where no permanent secretary is in place, the most senior director or head of administration is to take over. This directive takes effect from today, Wednesday, March the 26th, 2025. Well, let's move on now to the political landscape in Kogi Central, which continues to heat up as INEC has confirmed that it has received the contract details of the constituents pushing for her recall. Now, according to the electoral umpire, the notification is in line with constitutional provisions and the Commission's regulations and guidelines for recall of 2024. Now, the letter, signed by INEC Secretary Ruth Orera Anthony, has also been copied to the Senate President and published on the Commission's website. Now, INEC, through its National Commissioner, Sam Ulumeko, states that the next step is to scrutinize the list of signatories to verify that the petition is supported by over 50% of the registered voters in Kogi Central. INEC assures the public that the process will be open and transparent and that the outcome of this scrutiny will determine the next step. Now, in the meantime, an assembly of Ijaw leaders have been convened in Yenagoa, the Bayelsa state capital, deliberating on the state of affairs in the state. Now, leaders from the 6 states representing the heart of the Ijaw nation gathered at the Ijaw House today for an emergency stakeholders congress organized by the Ijaw National Congress. Now, the central focus of this critical meeting is the suspension of River State Governor Siminalayi Fubara and the broader implications for the Ijaw people. Our leaders are also calling for strengthened unity among the Ijaw people, addressing critical concerns about governance and ensuring their collective voice resonates across the country.
The Ijaw National Congress convened an emergency stakeholders congress in Yenagoa, bringing together traditional leaders, government officials, as well as the representatives of civil society organizations. This gathering provides an opportunity for stakeholders to deliberate on national issues, especially as it affects the Ijaw nation.
A 350 Ijaw men meeting is being arranged. What they intend to do is to select people they think that can be easily bought, powerful people, influential people amongst us. The intention is to put them together under one particular name. And if these guys are intimidated and bought over, the Ijaw nation is now bought over. If any Ijaw man attends such a meeting, the National Executive Council of the INC will not hesitate to register that person and publish his name as an enemy of Ijaw nation.
Other speakers at the event believe there's the need for constructive engagement on governance matters and policies affecting the South-South region.
Moving forward, our people should stop with the empty ultimatums that demystify us, make us sound like empty drums, and belittle us. We have only 2 governors in our region where we are in 6 states. In River State, we are in 12 local government areas. In Niger Delta, we are the largest ethnic nationality, and yet we are told we are minority of minorities. What an insult.
On his part, the Bayelsa State Governor, Doyediri, makes a case for the constitution of a committee to reconcile the different parties to the dispute in River State.
The declaration of a state of emergency in Rivers State, alongside the suspension of the governor, the deputy governor, and the State House of Assembly, has generated concerns. As chairman of the South-South Governors Forum, I urged the president at that time to reconsider his stance and allow for dialogue amongst the feuding parties. Because it is all a lose-lose situation for the people of Rivers State. And I call on the National Assembly and Mr. President to waste no time in inaugurating the Committee of Eminent Personalities that will immediately intervene and bring peace and bring the constituted government of Rivers State back to office.
The Congress is attended by key figures, including the Bayelsa State Deputy Governor, the Amayanapo of Tuan Brass, King Alfred Diete Spiff, and other eminent personalities.
All right, taking you back to developments from Kogi Central, where some constituents of that central senatorial district in Kogi State are, of course, criticizing the recall process for the lawmaker representing the area, Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan. The general coordinator of the Kogi Central People's Alliance, Mr. Baba Abdul Razak, stated this during the news conference in Hima Okei local government area of the state. Mr. Abdul Razak described the exercise as a mischief and an attempt to silence the lawmaker.
The recall process initiated by some constituents of Kogi Central Senatorial District continues to generate reactions, as the latest is coming from the Kogi Central People's Alliance. They are throwing their weight behind the suspended lawmaker, highlighting her qualities while speaking on the recall process.
It suffices to say that a genuine recall is supposed to be an organic process and not something engineered by a set of opportunistic enemies. The forces behind these shenanigans and facades called recall exercise have not been credible and courageous enough to unmark themselves. At best, they are ad hoc or Ponzi organizations.
You will recall that even the pronouncement by the Senate House says that her security has been withdrawn. So she needs to be careful. So she can't be everywhere. She's under threat. So she can't be everywhere. You can't expect her to be everywhere.
A former member of the House of Representatives states the readiness of the group to defend the mandate of the lawmaker.
Our people are very passionate, very sentimental, and emotional about that senatorial mandate, because it was given out of sheer love, out of the belief that Natasha has the capacity to deliver, and she's delivering. The fact that she has problem with the Senate is not enough for a performing senator to be called by his people. They did not vote for her. We that voted for her, the ordinary people that voted for her, will rise at the appropriate time.
The group is also appealing to the Senate to recall the suspended lawmaker unconditionally.
In part two, after the break, commotion in court as Okorie Sylvanus Sunday, a suspect arraigned by the EFCC, collapses during his money laundering trial. Please stay with us. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the News at 10 and Channels Television, broadcasting live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. 7 People's Democratic Party governors institute a suit before the Supreme Court of Nigeria challenging the 6-month suspension of the Rivers State Governor, Siminalayi Fubara. A heated exchange ensues as the Senate rejects motion to immortalize the late Professor Humphrey Nwosu. A bill seeking to remove immunity from the Vice President, governors and their deputy governors passes through a second reading at the House of Representatives. And Atlantic magazine publishes Yemen strike messages shared in White House group chat. To the Red Chamber now, where there was tension in the Senate today following the rejection of a motion to immortalize former chairman of the National Electoral Commission, the late Professor Humphrey Nwosu. The motion was brought under matters of urgent public importance by Senator Enyinaya Abaribe and co-sponsored by members of the Minority Caucus. However, the motion was rejected by the lawmakers, causing Senator Abaribe to surprisingly walk out of the plenary session.
What started as a routine session on the second day of plenary in the Senate took an unexpected turn when Senator Enyinaya Abaribe raised a motion of urgent public importance, calling for the immortalization of late Professor Humphrey Nwosu, former chairman of the National Electoral Commission.
The courageous defense of democratic electoral process during the 1993 presidential election led to the famous June 12 slogan, which ultimately confirmed Alhaji MKO Abiola as the winner.
It's okay. As soon as Senator Abaribe began his submission, the Senate's leader interrupted with a point of order, citing procedural issues.
My point of order is pursuant to Order 41, Sub 3 of our rules, moving a motion under Combined Orders 41 and 51. Shall ensure that copies of the motion are available for all senators.
A back and forth then ensued. Senator Abaribe's motion stirred controversy, exposing divisions among lawmakers over the legacies and role of the late NEC chairman in the June 12, 1993 presidential elections. The continuation of the motion was imperiled, compelling the Deputy Senate President who presided to call for a voice vote.
It's a bit controversial. Some see him as someone who truncated June 12. Some see him as a hero of June 12. So it's up to you. We'll put the question. Those in favor that this motion should go through, please say aye. Those against, say nay. The nays have it.
Senator Abaribe again tried to speak, but the House rule was again quoted.
By the fact that a senator wants to make a personal explanation, you must give that senator a chance to make that personal explanation. We are not under a dictatorship, Mr. President.
Personal opinions and personal matters not to be raised under Order 10 is to truncate the independence of senators and to not allow them to interject in the proceedings of the Senate to raise issues that are very fundamental and fundamental to them and their constituencies.
Mr. President, I don't know what is controversial for immortalizing Humphrey Nwosu and June 12. What is controversial there?
Right after, Senator Abaribe walks out of the Senate's chamber in protest. When tensions subsided, the lawmakers proceed with another motion raised by Senator Asukwo Ekpenyong, seeking to probe the rising cost of data services in the country.
The Senate is further concerned that the reasons provided by telecom providers for the data price hike include high operational costs, unfavorable exchange rates, are untenable, and appears that instead of addressing the root causes of the high cost of doing business in Nigeria, the burden is being unfairly transferred to end users.
Mandate the Committee on Communications to conduct an investigation into the factors driving the high cost of data and try to provide solutions for a sustainable and business-friendly telecommunications sector. Those in support of prayer 4 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
Meanwhile, the Senate has also passed a bill for the compulsory registration of citizens, aiming to overhaul Nigeria's identity management system through the repeal and reenactment of the National Identity Management Commission Act. From the National Assembly, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
2020.
Still at the National Assembly, and the House of Representatives has mandated its Committee on Works to conduct a forensic probe into the allocation, expenditure and outcomes of the 1.242 trillion Sukuk funds raised from 2017 to 2024. The committee is to identify instances of diversion, inflation or non-compliance contracts. In the meantime, 42 constitution amendment bills have scaled second reading in the House. Our National Assembly correspondent, Terry Kumi, now reports.
The Deputy Speaker presides for the second time this week as lawmakers convene for Wednesday's plenary session.
A matter of urgent public importance.
The attention of the House is immediately drawn to the over 1.2 trillion naira so far raised since 2017 through 6 sovereign sukuk issuances to finance 124 federal road projects across the 6 geopolitical zones.
The House observes that despite this significant investment, Nigeria's roads infrastructure remains in a deplorable state, with over 70% of the country's 200,000 kilometers road network still unpaved, as noted by S&P Global Ratings in January 2024. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, the House is worried that without robust accountability mechanisms, the Sukuk program risks becoming a conduit for mismanagement or corruption.
The committee is expected to submit a comprehensive report detailing findings, issues, and proposed remedial measures to the issues surrounding the sukuk financing in Nigeria.
On the need to avert the incessant...
In a related motion, the attention of the House is further drawn to the urgent need to avert incessant accidents, loss of lives and property occasioned by the ongoing rehabilitation and dualization of Aba Ikotekbene Road in Abia and Akwa Ibom states.
Aware that the job for the reconstruction and rehabilitation of Aba Ikotekbene Road was awarded to Mrs. CGGC Nigeria, who at the time of the award obligated to comply with the Bill of Engineering Measurement and Evaluation. Also aware that there have been incessant accidents resulting in the loss of lives and property on the road, principally due to the negligence of the contractors in implementing the Bill of Engineering Measurement and Evaluation.
Meanwhile, for the second day in a row, a pile of constitution amendment bills scaled second reading. Some of the notable proposals include a bill to alter the constitution to qualify the immunity conferred on the president and remove the immunity conferred on the vice president, governors, and their deputies in order to curb corruption, eradicate impunity, and enhance accountability in public office. A bill for an act to alter the constitution to separate the offices of the Attorney General of the Federation from that of the Minister of Justice. A bill for an act to alter the constitution to grant citizenship rights to spouses of women from Nigeria, specify the minimum number of youths and women that may be appointed into specific offices, as well as bills to create Ijaw State, Ifejesa State, Tiga State, Olu State, and Etiti State. The constitution amendment bills were not debated and so far brings the total passed through second reading to 81. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
6.
A mild drama occurred at the Federal High Court sitting in Lagos today when a businessman, Okorie Sunday, suddenly slumped during his trial for alleged money laundering. Okorie was arrested on March 19th this year at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport, Ikeja, Lagos, for failing to declare the sum of $299,000 and 100 euros. At his arraignment yesterday before Justice Deinde Dikbeolu, he had initially pleaded not guilty to the charge, but then today he moved to change his plea to guilty. Just as the charge was about to be reread to him to enable him change his plea, he suddenly collapsed in the dock. It then took about 6 men to carry him out of the courtroom to the court clinic where he was given first aid treatment before he was subsequently carried into a waiting white bus and then taken to the hospital. The court stood down the matter for over 4 hours, after which the doctors certified that the defendant was fit to to stand trial. At the resumption of proceedings, the defendant took his plea. The EFCC withdrew 2 counts of counterfeiting scam, and the defendant pleaded guilty to the remaining 2 counts of failing to declare $299,000 and €100, which were found to have been concealed in relaxed hair containers in his traveling bags. Following his guilty plea, the EFCC called 2 witnesses who reviewed the facts against him, after which Justice Dikpeolu convicted and sentenced him to 6 months imprisonment for failure to declare the sum, and also ordered the forfeiture of the monies to the federal government of Nigeria. The court held that the jail term will commence from the date of his arrest. Still ahead on the news at 10, Debt Management Office announces a 300 billion naira sovereign sukuk to fund capital projects in the country. That's on Business News. Please join us again. Welcome back. The legal profession remains one of the most respected in the country, no doubt. Yet Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Kudirat Kekereekun, has expressed worry over the practice of law in the country, lamenting the downturn in adherence to ethical principles in the legal profession. The CJN was speaking at the public presentation of the report of the Directions of Legal Practitioners Disciplinary Committee. Our correspondent, Emanuela Ekele, reports.
This is the maiden annual lecture of the body of benchers and senior officials, including Vice President Kashim Shettima, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Kudirat Kekereekun, Governor Lucky Ayedatiwa of Ondo State, and former Minister of Works, Mr. Babatunde Fashola, have joined to witness the presentation of the report of the Directions of the Legal Practitioners Disciplinary Committee.
This maiden lecture.
The discussion here focuses on maintaining the ethics of the legal profession.
There are common agreements that the standard of lawyers being produced are of less quality than the years when the body was established. And so, minimum qualification and perhaps age should be considered. The question then is whether the law degree should be made a second degree holder before being offered admission to the Nigerian Law School. There are beliefs that the ethics of the legal profession has also suffered deterioration.
The Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Kudirat Kekereekun, shares her thoughts on the subject matter and recommends enforcement of professional discipline.
Today, more than ever, there's an urgent need to recommit ourselves to the fundamental values of ethics, discipline, and professional responsibility. It is instructive to note that the body of benchers, as the apex institution of the legal profession in Nigeria, is uniquely positioned to lead the charge in this regard.
The Vice President applauds the judiciary for standing firm against vested interest, which he believes has safeguarded the nation's democratic future.
It is the clearest affirmation that a nation is not governed by a mob. That is why we recognize that the mandate entrusted to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu was affirmed by a judiciary that did not yield to the weight of vested interests. A judiciary that understood that the fate of a nation is too sacred to be intimidated by any party or bartered for compromise.
Following different sanctions on erring lawyers and judges, the keynote speaker, a senior advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Babatunde Fashola, believes the Legal Practitioners Disciplinary Committee has to do more to address indiscipline among legal professionals.
I will add my own words to those great words by simply saying that a poor bar portends a poor future, and a good bar portends a better future. And this must be the imperative for members of the body, not only to keep their hands firmly placed on the regulatory door of admission to the bar. They must also now lead a crusade of urgency to remove unsuitable persons and characters before they bring the house down.
The report of the Directions of the Legal Practitioners Disciplinary Committee is then unveiled. Emanuela Ekele, Channels Television News.
So let's head now to the nation's capital where Gloria Umezuoke is standing by to give us the latest from our Abuja studios. Hello, Gloria. Over to you.
Well, thank you, Ijaw. We turn attention now to Zamfara, where the state government is commiserating with the people of Anka local government area following the latest ambush by bandits, which claimed 10 lives and injured 15 people. The attack, which occurred around the Bagega axis on Saturday, targeted operatives of the Zamfara State Community Protection Guards and local vigilantes returning from a clearance operation with the military. The newly appointed Commissioner of Police for the Federal Capital Territory, CP Saka Ijaw, is assuring residents of effective and adequate security as he officially assumes office as the 33rd Commissioner of Police. Addressing journalists at the headquarters of the command in Abuja, CP Ijaw pledged to strengthen policing efforts and tackle criminal activities across the territory. The new police chief who took over from the Mr. Olatunji Disu also promised to work closely with residents and other security agencies to maintain peace and order, just as he urged the public to cooperate with the police by providing timely and credible information. Now, Africa and the Caribbean must collaborate in different sectors to leverage on the boundless resources inherent in both continents for the growth and benefit of the people. Now, this was the resolve of participants at the second day of the Afro-Caribbean Investment Summit in Abuja. The summit, which had conversations centered on agriculture and access to finance, amongst others, seeks to explore opportunities in the Caribbean while also allowing Caribbean investors to access potential ventures in Africa. Our correspondent, Victoria Longjohn, reports.
It's the second day of the Africa-Caribbean Investment Summit, and this gathering is convened to deliberate on investment and economic opportunities for both Africa and the Caribbean. The need to strengthen agribusiness and food security partnership between Africa and the Caribbean forms discussions on the first panel.
How do we capture that growing population, which I believe there is going to be an advantage to agriculture, because right now, currently, 70% of our population is youthful population.
Based on our size, that greenhouse technology is critical for us, and we also broke ground to build a greenhouse village, and that will be a series of those being built across the country.
The conversation also explored ways to overcome barriers to trade and investment opportunities in both regions.
There is a need to develop a preferential trade agreement or partnership framework between AFTA and CARICOM that will harmonize tariffs, standard, custom processes. Such agreements, which could cover key products and services, will help to catalyze trade flows between Africa and the Caribbean.
Fostering sustainable businesses and deepening access to finance were also highlighted.
Possibly engaging in a bilateral trade investment treaty and carving out provisions that would encourage and incentivize not only investment promotion, but itself protecting investors' rights.
We have been going through a lot of transformation to ensure that we get to the point where our economies and our political structure would respond to our needs and not the needs of others. Our history is our history, not their history. Our political development is our political development. Therefore, whatever we develop must serve us.
It really is about creating a framework, an economic framework that matches returns with the risks taken.
As discussions on partnerships and investments continue at the summit, the consensus here is that it is crucial now more than ever to invest in each other for the benefit of both regions. From Abuja, Victoria Longjohn, Channels Television News.
The Managing Director of the Bank of Industry, Mr. Olashopo Olusi, has been speaking of how its partnership with the National Sugar Development Council over the years is creating thousands of jobs, promising that the bank will leverage on the partnership to boost local production of sugar. Speaking during the signing of an MOU between the bank and the National Sugar Development Council in Abuja, Mr. Ulusi assures that adequate funding of the sugar subsector will not only address issues of sugar imports, but will crash down the prices while creating jobs.
Officials of the Bank of Industry are meeting their colleagues from the National Sugar Development Council to improve on a partnership that started in 2009. The latest synergy is one that is expected to improve local sugar production and boost the nation's economy.
From our side, I want to assure you that we're completely dedicated to ensuring that the sugar sector in Nigeria develops to the full potential, because we believe it will create jobs, we believe it will help to reverse the importation of sugar in the country. More importantly, to drive down costs and to make local raw materials available for users.
For years, the Bank of Industry has been at the forefront of providing funding to grow the nation's industrial sector.
So once again, on behalf of my colleagues,
while the bank officials are excited about the collaboration, they are hopeful of more to keep making impacts.
What the National Sugar Council is trying to do is also to create impact in this country. On behalf of my colleagues here and those that are across the country, we want to thank the MDPY and the EAS, National Sugar Council, for this opportunity to ensure that whatever it takes to ensure that it succeeds.
Statistics from the National Sugar Development Council shows that Nigeria spends about $1 billion for sugar imports, and the council is hoping that the narrative will change soon.
This agreement we are here to sign today will go a long way in catalyzing the attainment of full local production of sugar. It is a critical step in the sense that it allows us to be able to invest in properly and drive critical components of local production of sugar, and gives us an opportunity to properly prove quite a number of these opportunities that exist. A couple of things that we're looking to do in the sector is to very, very rapidly increase the amount of land under cane, to rapidly increase the amount of processing capacity of local sugar production, to attract a lot more credible investors to the space.
After the speeches, officials put pen to paper to sign the agreement, an effort that is expected to increase local production of sugar and create jobs.
Well, that's it from the nation's capital. For more stories, we head over now to Will Ibong in Lagos.
Thank you, Gloria. Now, the Debt Management Office has announced its Series 7 sovereign sukuk issuance to raise about 300 billion naira. According to the Director General of DMO, Mrs. Patience Onia, who met with stakeholders in the financial sector in Lagos, the proceeds will be used to finance capital projects nationwide, which will yield significant benefits. Since the first issuance in September 2017, the federal government has raised 1.09 trillion naira in sovereign sukuk. Now, the African Development Bank Group, AFDB, has launched a new country strategy paper to boost agriculture and enhance economic growth in Nigeria. This was made known by the Director General of AFDB's Nigeria Country Department, Dr. Abdul Kamara, who led a delegation to meet with the Minister of Finance, Mr. Wale Edun. He says a part of the strategy includes the second phase of the National Agricultural Growth Scheme, which focuses on food security and rural development. Now we head now to the domestic stock market. We recorded the first pullback this week, largely from losses in MTN Nigeria. Ijaw Mekwa has the details.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Stock Market Report. Well, investor sentiments have flipped at the NGX today. For the very first time this week, we record a red close, and it's because of MTN Nigeria. MTN Nigeria today lost 6 naira 60 kobo on each of its share prices, and then it closed at 238 naira 40 kobo. There are some positive sentiment when we look at the sectors. For instance, banking, we see recorded a positive 0.8% 0.13%. Consumer goods also was positive at the close of trade. Nigerian breweries contributed to that. Of course, the figures contribute to that positive that we see in banking. Oil and gas crawling back up today. Eternal oil gained today 3.91%. Japan gold also gained. Well, Owando is missing in that. But at the close of trade today, because of MTN Nigeria, we see a red all share index. And even though we are still holding on to 105,000 level, the all share dropped 0.10%. The market cap is still around 66 trillion naira. So for the very first time this week, welcome the bear.
Sorry, unfortunately, yesterday you did get your hopes up, but the bear took over. Now let's get a sense of how other global markets performed today. And that's a wrap on business. It's back to Ayotunde for the rest of the news at 10.
Many thanks, Will. Here's Simon Pusey with our international news and around the world in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5.
Just confirmed with CENTCOM, we are a go for mission launch. Does that indicate to you that there is about to be a military operation?
Newly published messages by The Atlantic magazine appear to show U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth sharing information about U.S. airstrikes on Yemen earlier this month. The messages include exact timings of drone and missile attacks on the Iran-backed Houthis, followed by updates on targets hit. The Atlantic, whose editor-in-chief, Jeffrey Goldberg, was apparently added to the chat by mistake, has published the full exchange of real-time messages sent on the app Signal. Some Democrats are now calling for the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's resignation on the grounds that he texted sensitive and classified information on that chat.
I spent my life in service to this country. I deployed 3 times to combat in service to this nation. I learned in that time in service that responsibility is core to leadership. You accept responsibility when things go wrong. You admit mistakes. You set the standard from the very top. It is completely outrageous to me that administration officials come before us today with impunity, no acceptance of responsibility, excuse after excuse after excuse, while we send our men and women downrange to do incredibly difficult, incredibly dangerous things on our behalf.
Russia has said some Western sanctions must be lifted before it begins a maritime ceasefire with Ukraine. Within hours of the US announcing the two sides had agreed to halt strikes in the Black Sea in separate deals, the Kremlin said it would only take place once sanctions on a number of Russian banks were lifted. Overnight, Moscow launched a drone attack on the port city of Mykolaiv, Ukrainian officials said, with President Volodymyr Zelensky saying the strikes were a clear signal Russia did not want peace. At least 24 people have been killed as multiple wildfires continue to ravage South Korea's southeast region. Most of the victims are in their 60s and 70s, with 12 in a critical condition. More than 23,000 people have been forced to flee their homes. The fires gutted a 1,300-year-old temple, where many cultural relics were removed and transported to safer ground.
That I decided that I didn't want her to have all that fun by herself, and so I'm going to join her.
Denmark has welcomed changes to a Greenland trip by US Vice President J.D. Vance and his wife Usha, which has been reduced to a visit of just a US space base. Earlier this week, it was announced that Usha Vance would spend several days in Greenland, visiting the capital and attending cultural events like a popular annual dog sled race. The White House said on Tuesday that J.D. Vance would join his wife in Greenland, but the couple would only spend a day there visiting the US Pitufik space base. 2 aircraft from the French display team Patrouille de France have crashed in rehearsals. The 3 pilots of the 2 Alpha jets ejected and were found alive and conscious. The 2 aircraft were taking place in rehearsals not far from the Airbase 113 in Saint-Dizier. The Sudanese army says it has recaptured the airport in the capital Khartoum from the paramilitary RSF, making it its latest territorial gain in the brutal 2-year civil war. General Mohammed Abdel Rahman al-Bilawi, commander of the operation in eastern Khartoum, said troops had fully secured it and might be able to clear the rest of the RSF fighters out by the end of the day. The army had been moving swiftly since recapturing the presidential palace on Friday and seizing state institutions taken by the Rapid Support Forces. And Prince Harry has resigned from a charity he set up after a row between the trustees and the chair of its board. The Duke of Sussex co-founded Centre Bail in 2006 in honour of his mother, Diana the Princess of Wales, to help people in South Africa living with HIV and AIDS. He stepped down with his co-founder, Prince Siyoso of Lesotho, and the Board of Trustees because its relationship with the chairwoman, Dr. Sophie Chandauka, broke down to a point beyond repair. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.
Thank you, Simon. Welcome to Sports News. In the Nigerian Premier Football League, Abia Warriors beat Lobi Stars 2-0 courtesy of goals from Sunday Megwo and Ijaw de Souza. Elsewhere, Kainde Malik scored the only goal as Bayelsa United beat Rivers United 1-0, while Kano Pillars and Bend Assurance settled for a goalless draw. Abayomi Lawal got on the score sheet as Kwara United beat Nasarawa United 1-0. Sunshine Stars and Heartland played out a goalless draw. Brazil's captain Marquinhos apologizes to fans after they were thumped 4-1 by bitter rivals Argentina in a 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifier. The reigning world champions were without Lionel Messi and Lautaro Martinez, but still dominated the Seleção from the outset. Brazil have won just 1 in their last 4 games, and Marquinhos urges his teammates to turn things around as quickly as possible. While Argentina have already secured their place at the 2026 World Cup, Brazil still have work to do to claim an automatic berth in North America. "19-year-old wildcard from the Philippines, Alexandra Ila, produced a huge upset at the Miami Open, defeating world number 2 Iga Swiatek 6-2. 7-5 to reach the semi-finals. Ranked 140th in the world, Ila took advantage of an unusually poor display from Swiatek, keeping her focus as she fought back from 4-2 down in the second set. Ila, who has now beaten 3 Grand Slam winners on her route to the last 4, broke the pole for the 8th and final time when Swiatek was serving to stay in the match at 6-5 down in the second set and looked in disbelief as she struggled to contain her emotion. That sport is back to you.
Many thanks, Chris. And the main news again. 7 People's Democratic Party governors have instituted a suit before the Supreme Court of Nigeria challenging the 6-month suspension of the Rivers State Governor, Siminalayi Fubara. A heated exchange today ensued as the Senate rejected a motion to immortalize the late Professor Humphrey Nwosu. A bill seeking to remove immunity from the Vice President, governors and their deputy governors today passed through a second reading at the House of Representatives. And Atlantic magazine has published a Yemen strike messages shared in the White House group chat. And that's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ayotunde Balogun. You have a good night.